If you're not using AI, you're falling behind. And I don't mean that as like a hype statement. I've actually seen it in practice. And I've seen the developers who actually have the systems in place to make use of AI just pulling super far ahead. And the ones that don't, falling very, very short. And I can't state this enough. It's a huge parallel. In this video, we'll go over 4 things I think that really make a difference and how you should really approach this. I've been quiet for 3 months on here, but life just caught up and I've just been super busy, but I haven't been sitting still. I've really been deep diving into AI coding, building with real projects every single day. And the thing that surprised me isn't which AI tool works best, it's actually how you build around it and the systems that you use. And the developers that actually don't have the systems are falling way short. And without those systems, the tool doesn't actually save you. And in this video, we'll talk about what I actually mean with all of that. So most people jump straight into AI coding, on their code base. So just imagine this, you prompt up code or open code, and you just start saying, hey, I want to build this project, and you let AI decide everything for you. But what ends up happening is you get start getting frustrated with the output and it doesn't quite fit. And the problem isn't actually the AI. The problem itself is actually the code base. And this kind of goes into point one. The code base actually matters more than you should know. So your code base has to be ready for AI. And if it's not, you just need to understand the limits of how AI can work with it. An AI agent can read your code, and if your code doesn't really have a clear pattern or clear structure or clear convention, the AI guesses and then guesses wrong. And this is kind of the foundation. If you skip this, nothing else works. So your code base has to be ready for AI. If it's not, you really need to understand how AI can actually work with your code base. So, for example, if you've got a very fractured code base, it might be understandable that you should basically target one section of the code base for AI and tell it to limit itself to that point. All right, so your code base has to be ready for AI. If it's not, you need to understand the limits of how AI can actually work with it. AI agent reads your code. The code doesn't really have clear patterns, clear structure, clear conventions. The AI guesses and then it gets it wrong. So you can think about this like you need a very clear, well-designed code base. If you've got a very fractured code base and you just tell AI, I'm trying to sort this bug, sometimes it pulls different files from different locations and doesn't get quite the right picture and then builds something that just breaks the code base a bit more. So the foundation is very key. If you skip this, nothing else really works. Or if you do have an existing code base, understand the limits of how AI can actually fit into that code base. That's quite like important to understand. So what does actually readiness look like? So how I would define this is you need, clear file structure, clear naming conventions, and also some AI context files that actually explain how the architecture and certain files are made and maintained, just so the AI follows those standards. And the best thing of this is your review agents can also use those contexts to make sure the AI is actually following them too. So I would say is the bare minimum. It's just really having those clear standards for each one. And just briefly, what do I actually mean by a context system? So just on screen here, I have a context system for this small project. You can see I've got like animation patterns, backend, navigation, things like this. And in future videos, I'll go a little bit more in detail how you should think about actually customizing these context files and keeping it quite tailor-made for your code base. And context is not just for feature work, it's actually for the business itself that's put in here. So your AI actually knows why it's building it. But like I said, that'll be in a future video. But this is what I mean by context. So your code base has a clear structure in terms of where things go. So for example, in this one, we've got like apps, we've got infrastructure, so we know where things could lie. So the AI can actually then populate different apps or different packages and things like that. But it can also get a lot more information from context files if it needs to work with these things. But that's what I mean by clear structure. I know you're probably thinking that sounds like a lot of work, just use AI tool. But here's the thing: you either spend that time up front once, or you spend it every single session fighting the AI for bad assumptions. All right, so assume you've got a good coding structure in place. You got your context files, you got good file structure and patterns and all that. There's still one other problem that can happen, and people kind of skip this entirely. What is that? And it's actually around testing. So you actually have tests. I don't mean we wrote some tests once and you just forgot about it, but you actually have like a test suite when you're actually building. This doesn't mean it be like super complicated. It just needs to do the bare minimum so you can actually test and make sure you're catching bugs early. So some of these can just be like a general like npm test, so you can have a different test seat. You can also be some compile tests, so like does your code even compile or does it even have a type check? Those are the kind of tests I'm talking about. You need some kind of system that AI can actually validate itself with before it even like attempts to run it. So I'd say first type check, then build check, and then have like a some kind of like test suite that you can do. This is really like handy, especially if the tests are validated or actually relevant to what you're trying to build. Then you actually know the AI is actually working with it. There's multiple stages for this. I could spend a whole video just talking about testing. So I'm going to just go cover the few tests that I've been using myself. One is just like a fast little test suite, so like the type and compile check, and then I have like some mock tests that I just use to make sure the function does what I expect, and then I validate that. The next thing is I actually have a local Docker container that mimics my production. And you can use like a Docker container because sometimes you can just run code locally and you can actually use the AI to even test it yourself. So you can use skills like Agent Browser and things like that to actually test like UI changes, even like going through the application itself. I find this quite handy. So you have these like parallels of tests before you get to the main one. And what I like about this, your confidence with deploying code gets a lot higher. And the last thing, it's not actually on screen, is actually having good code review system. So that's either having a good AI code reviewer that uses the context and actually catches out bugs. So it's like actually really trying to like break your code and finding out where the bugs are. And then also human review. Without all of this, you actually, you know, actually generating bugs and deploying bugs. And this actually matters a lot more than people might think because you're generating about, code about 10 times faster, which means you could also be generating bugs 10 times faster. And if you've got multiple people on the team, this is say that disaster is not too far around the corner. And probably some of you are already experiencing this and feeling very frustrated with AI coding, and you just don't think it works and everything's broken. Trust me, it's probably because your systems aren't in place well enough. Either the person doesn't know how to use them, or it's just a bit too free flowing and people are just committing things without understanding. So you've got a clean code base and you've got fast tests. Now, how do you actually build multiple things without losing your mind? And this is where it kind of gets interesting. All right, so work's getting faster with AI, and you can build more features in hours, which used to take days. But now you're juggling more things at once. And you might have multiple features you need to build concurrently just to really make use of all this extra work you put in. What comes next? This is where get worktrees really come in. It's a command that allows you to make a parallel working directory from the same repo. And this is super valuable if you've got the first two things I talked about earlier, a good code base and good testing suite in place. You can now generate like you can ah, so this is where Get Worktrees really comes in. It actually allows you to make a working directory from the same repo. And if you got the first two things I was mentioning earlier, a good code base and a good way of testing things locally before you even deploy, now you can actually split that and actually make use of Get Worktrees and actually get good results. There's no stashing, no branch switching, and you can just populate. When you can just build features in that branch and then commit, and you don't need to switch, stash things and switch between branches. It's very convenient, especially with working on your local. But here's a caveat with get work trees. It allows you to, work on multiple features at once and enables a lot more speed, but it also brings with more chaos with it. And you kind of need to learn to switch between context systems, between projects, and it can get quite hard and quite distracting. This is actually quite a hard skill to learn, and there's two danger zones I kind of want to talk about here. So one danger zone is actually over relying on AI. So for example, you let it generate code, you don't quite understand what it does, and then danger two, you're not really understanding what you're doing, but you're shipping anyway. So those are both bad. And the middle ground is kind of where everything works. You kind of use AI to accelerate your work, but you stay in control. So how does that already look? So let's say you've got a new feature coming in, you look at the specs, you try understand how is this going to fit in the architecture. So you yourself say, well, I understand the architecture has X, Y, and Z. So I need to put this feature here, but it needs these are the conditions that need to make, and it should be in a good code structure following the standards, and then you can use AI to like help you plan that and then validate the plan before it even executes the code. And you can do that on multiple different branches, and then you have your test suites that we talked about. Then you do your code review, and that's a lot better way of parallelizing your work a lot faster. If you don't do this, well, you've increased your speed, but you've also increased the amount of bugs that you're going to put in your system. And bugs, in my experience, take a lot longer to fix than just getting it right the first time. So With Git Worktrees, it's like I said, you can work between multiple of them, but you need to know how to manage them. And I just want to have a quick show what I'm using at the moment that I've found really well. So I've actually switched to like the terminal now. So I used to use everything in cursor and VS Code and things like that. But the problem is if you're using with Git Worktrees, you have one branch that always has the same thing. So what I like at the moment, my default is using iterm2. Yep. So I like using iterm2 now. So that's what you see on screen. So item two. All right. So what is great about, item two? Well, essentially you can create new tabs like I'm doing here. So we can just see I've got multiple things here. I'm just going to go into the next systems AI and I'm just going to open up Zillij. I believe that's how you pronounce it. If I'm wrong, tell me in the comments. But essentially it's just a multi, it's like TMAX. This is a multiplexer. So you can create new windows. So for example, I've got two panes here and I can just switch between the panes quite easily. I can have open code in the one and, in the other, I can have like Git UI. So I can just like view the Git and then I can use, open code on the right. But also nice is I can also name this. So I can just say, this is test one. And we can see here, there's test one in the corner here. So what's nice is you can also see there's shortcuts to jump between the terminals. So if I go command 4, it's going to jump here. Command 1 will jump to the top, and command 3. So let's just do that quick. So if I go command 3, it's there. Command 4, it just jumps through. And what's nice is if you've got multiple work trees, you can just look at your work trees here. You can name what feature you're working on, what branch, what repo, and you never have to get really confused. And because of the multiplexer here, where you're just like opening different tabs and things like that, you don't really need to open different terminals to kind of like figure out where things are. Because you might want to, use open code for, doing one function. You might want a different Codex or Claude doing something else. If you're using multiple AI tools like I'm constantly doing right now, I kind of switch and choose between what I'm trying to do at the time, and just having multiple windows and panes and tabs for that one, branch is really handy. I don't need to worry about confusing what is going on where. This is just a really good way of organizing your code and keeping, you really focused on what you need to do in that feature slash branch. Yep. So on screen, I'm just showing you again. This is a stillage. So you can also use these a lot of different other tools. Like I also tried Yazzie File Manager to have a bit of like file system to work through things. And then I also used a bit of Helix. So I've been just experimenting with that, but I will expand this on later videos, especially on what I'm settling down on. But this is really, really great for if using Get Worktrees to really maximize your productivity and also not to get too confused what's going on. And what I like about the setup is it's very easy to get started. And if I leave my laptop for the day, I kind of come back and I know exactly where I'm at, just because of the tabs and what tree I'm working on. It never really confuses me. So it's just a really good way. All right. So you probably think this is like a lot of tools, a lot of work. And trust me, just putting in a little bit more work at the beginning really saves you pain down the line. I just go over it all over again. So just having like a clean code base and just good patterns really helps the AI know what's going on with the context files. You can then also make sure you have Git enabled in that code base. So you can use Git worktrees and the agent you can use on different branches to extract the different contexts and build features in parallel. And if you have the right tests in place where you can run things on local, then you can actually test it in each of its branches before it even gets to a PR, and you can have higher confidence that you're shipping reliable code. And then lastly, you've got your code checks on each one. So that will be a code agent and just a human verified code review, just double checking that things are matching what you expect and the actual feature was thought out. That will lead you to a lot better results in production. So if you have all these in place, your life's a lot easier. AI generates code, you test, you validate, and you catch, you have catch mechanisms that verify the work. And Git work trees just help keep everything clean and easy to work with. And then your terminal kind of just holds everything together so you can flow between each of the workspaces quite effortlessly without ever getting context confused and just actually making sure things ship when they need to. Again, this is stuff I'm actually working with. This is what I'm using every day and I'm seeing great results. So this is not hypothetical. This is actual stuff that I'm using. And I highly encourage you guys to do the same. Just a quick summary where things are at right now. Life caught up with me for the last few months. I actually needed that time, but I'm back now and I've got a lot more to share. I've been building systems like this for the last year. I've been applying them incrementally and seeing great results. And everything I share here, the little things, the builds, all the stuff actually works in production. It's not theoretical stuff. I'm sharing you with practical advice. And if that sounds useful, there's more videos coming, walkthroughs, deep dives, and real builds. And if you want to stay in the loop, there'll be an email link in the description down below. Nothing fancy, just updates when stuff really drops. And subscribe if you want the full workthrough of this series. I'm building the stack in public, and the next few videos will go step by step, everything I'm about to show you. Anyway, glad to be back, this build, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button on the way out. Cheers, guys. Have a good one.